in 1932 and raised in Menard until 18 years old. He then went to Texas A&M, Army, University of California in Berkeley, and Rangeland Ecology. His first job was at Iowa State University in 1962, where he learned to burn native prairie and establish it. How about that? Dr. Landers became a range extension specialist at Texas A&M Center in San Angelo in 1979, dealing with brush control, poisonous plants, prescribed burning, 4-H grasses, teaching lots and lots of 4-H teams, and of course range contests. Dr. Landers retired in 1994 to spend time on the ranch in Pecan Orchard in Menard and make wooden nickels and of course speak at burn schools and hopefully pass down that information that he has so graciously learned through the years. So without further ado, Dr. Jake Landers, thank you for being here.
Okay, well, she said I came to 4-H to the center here in 1979 after several years of learning burning in Iowa parks and prairie edges, and I thought that I might be able to make some impression in Texas on prescribed burning. I made a statement that 10% of the rangeland ought to be burned every year. Well, I should have said 1% and then reduced it even further, because I don't think we have ever gotten many counties to burn 1% on purpose. Henry Wright was actively researching burning in those days in the Panhandle and North. And then a while later, Larry White and I were doing some burning symposiums, and then eventually Butch Taylor got involved later on. And it wasn't until we had done a lot of our burning with ranchers, learning the procedure, that Larry reminded me that our project leaders had not been very keen on burning, so we were sticking our neck out pretty far. So that's kind of a beginning of my experience in Texas, sticking your neck out. One of the first burns that I conducted was in Slacker County, a little place owned by the teacher, Tobosa Country, and the water pumper ran out of gas. The fire went across the fire guard, and we called out the local fire department. So that was the only prescribed burn over many years that I had to call out the locals. And you learn from that. I didn't burn in Slacker County again for a while. The word got around. But my first experience in burning was when I was about 10 years old, and my younger brother, 3 years younger, and I built a campfire out in the edge of the pasture where we had an old live oak tree where we believed there was a buried treasure. And I decided to burn a little stump. And I carried fire over to it and dropped some on the way, and the fire started creeping down the field fence and a cow trail. Well, I took off my old leather jacket and started beating it out. My younger brother ran to the house a quarter mile away, and about the time I got it out, my dad drove up in the pickup with a barrel of water and tow sacks, put out the fence post or two, and my sister was in the pickup, and she looked at me with you could read it, "You are going to get it." But my dad had understood, and the only words he said were, "Don't burn in the pasture in the winter when it's dry." Mother was a little bit more disturbed, and she gave me a little more of a hard time. Then In 1980, I burned on the pasture with Dad on purpose about 2 acres to show him that I could put a fire out. And then before he died in 1991, we had burned 100 acres. So he was willing to learn or to let me experiment. My first prescribed burn, these were all cool season burns. We were burning in from January to April. This is kind of what we were promoting, and some of the ranchers, the main problem was the lack of fuel. Roger Colby just turned 90, was one of the first persons in Menard County that I helped burn, and at the end of the frustrating morning, he realized that we didn't have enough fuel. So instead of instead of forgetting about it, he came on, and last year he had one of the best prescribed burns I have ever seen, and he did it pretty much with his own crew. So the question is, what is a successful burn? Was the one I had to call the fire department out a successful burn? As it turned out, we did have a very successful burn, but the teacher never burned again. So I consider a successful burn as if it's repeated, and the rancher that learns the first time might not do well at all, but it's the second or the third or the fourth that you learn by. So many of the first time attempts were disappointing, and it would bring on a bit of ridicule, and you just have patience and work with people that will work with you. Now, some are spectacular, successful. The Llano County School land is just across the highway here, and the first burn we did there, we had a manager that had leased the land, and there was a square mile that hadn't been grazed when he took it over with a lot of pear and small mesquite. So we burned a square mile in 45 minutes from first to stop. The smoke stopped billowing. Unfortunately, when you put on that kind of smoke, it scares a lot of people in the neighborhood. But follow-up fires, and eventually he lost the lease, so we didn't do much with the Llano County. Frank Price is here, and Frank knows that I can experiment a little bit, but one of the best burns was an early burn that we did on land in Coke County, and I think Frank has been fiddling with fire ever since. The first actual workshop we held in Menard County was in 1982. I showed Dad I could put out a controller burn. So on Buddy Clark Park and Lightning Ranch was our first, and we had 5 people to come out of a good population of ranchers in Menard County because they weren't sure we were sound of mind to set a pasture on fire on purpose. Well, from that beginning, Buddy Clark has managed with fire, and this past year burned over 4,000 acres, controlled burning, and has some of the best looking country, open live oak country between Menard and Brady. During this time, the Soil Conservation Service, later NRCS, were very restricted in what they could do. with prescribed burning. Mark Mosley was around trying to reason with some of the administrators, and we managed to set up a prescribed burn workshop. And if I'm not mistaken, it was Lake Travis. Does that sound right? No, Lake Thomas. Lake Thomas, and he had a crew, and I had a pumper, and flappers and drip torches. And the lake manager said, "Well, I've got it bladed for you, but it doesn't matter. You can let it go on over and burn out that whole area." Well, I didn't tell anybody else but Mark about that. And sure enough, one of the crew got a little rambunctious and was setting a strip head fire where you burn a narrow strip along the fire guard. Got a little rambunctious, and the flames were going over the fire guard like this, and it jumped. Well, that's the time you pee in your pants if you think it's not supposed to. So when it was over with, it was a good lesson in talking point that you need, if somebody needs to yell at you, you need to respond quickly and regroup. So I think I really retired before the NRCS got their act together on prescribed burning. But it takes patience to accept the role of fire, and fire is going to occur in this country. So the more you understand about it and using it, I think the better off we are. We still have a lot to learn, and I hope I'm still learning, but I'm not out on the fire line too often anymore. I can drive and pick up and see what's going on. I now have 350 acres of the old ranch that I really enjoy, and we've burned the last 2 seasons very effectively, half of it. So instead of burning 10%, I've burned half the last 2 years, but I can control the grazing on it. This past March, we burned 2 acres that I have with a high fence where I've got some rare plants that I'm protecting, and with 2 high school kids. No, wait a minute. Was that Kathy? Was that with your?
We were there too.
Was that the year before?
No, that was last year.
Okay. A 6-year-old carried the drip torch. So we've got him going. And we burned 100 acres last season in 16, with 2 high school kids and pumper in the back of a 4-wheeler, in the back of a mule, and we used a quart of water for 100 acres. So if you know what you're doing and you've got the wind right, and you can burn pretty safely. Now, what this country looked like 150, 200 years ago. This is Shin-Oak, and I've got it that it sprouted in 1865. Now, Shin-Oak, live oak, sprouts when it's top killed from very old root systems. Root systems probably go back centuries. And so, how come it has grown undisturbed since 1865? We have burned. So I now have 25 or so samples from Menard County of Shin-Oak. You can read the tree rings pretty clearly. And when I cut this one, You can see the 1957 drought rings. You can't count 7 rings because they're so jumbled together. But you know that this is it properly dated. So then, if shin oak and live oak have sprouted since 1865, what did the country look like in 1860 or 1864? It burned the hell out of it. Somebody did. And in the early settlement, probably burning was very typical, and it certainly dated back to the original human occupants of this territory. But now we have changed considerably. If we've got live oak trees high as the ceiling and shin oak high as the ceiling, that is a considerable change from 200 years ago. And it's for Menard County, but I think it applies to a heck of a lot of the Edwards Plateau area where the woody plants have come in very very solid. Now, I've worked with old veteran ranchers, and I've worked with new landowners. And at one time, I had my doubts of whether the new landowners could pick up the love of the land as old timers. I decided to make fun of the new landowners a little bit, so I'm going to read a poem, and I call it "Instant Ranchers." Better get them. I can read them better than I can remember them. Probably better than I can write them. Instant Ranchers. We put it in the Ranch magazine. A doctor who for many years examined throats and dirty ears soon had his money piled up high. He had spent enough on sweetie pie, then found a ranch that he would buy. A lawyer, too, had made some cash on many family feud and bash, took the steps that he had planned, got the cash he had on hand, and started buying up some land. A banker who had made a loan on a ranch he'd like to own. High living did the rancher in. The ranch, its assets in a spin, landed in the banker's den. A student with an ailing father skipped through school without a bother, almost had a fine degree, had no grade above a C. He got the ranch at 23. Julie Bell, a city gal, liked to fly with rancher pal. Once when checking coyote kill, he crashed the plane upon a hill. She got the ranch from rancher's will. Instant ranchers, are they all? Will they be with us next fall to struggle through the rancher's fits with grats too sharp when winter hits, too stubborn yet to call it quits? All there is to ranch success is to hire a man, I guess, who keeps the books and does the chores and keeps the saddles off the floors and likes to breathe the outer doors. Instant ranchers, all in all, have few facts they can recall on grazing systems tried and true, on grandma grasses red and blue. Oh, how the cedar problem grew. What happens to the ranch next year when the drought returns, I fear? Will the instant rancher know to cut the stocking rate down low, or will he let the hired man go? Let's clean it up and grow some grass and build an entrance gate with class and cattle guards instead of gates and a registered herd that nationally rates and watch for income tax rebates. How plainly does my envy show as instant ranchers grow, the SCS can give advice, and county agents can be nice, and other experts for a price. But I suggest another plan. For instance, ranchers, if I can, a lot of progress I could show if they had half of what I know and I had half their money flow. Well, that was making fun, but I soon learned that some of the instant ranchers are quite adept at learning, and we've had some good success with people who are on the land for the first time and have a little background money, willing to spend it, and don't have to absolutely make a dollar every time they turn around to survive on the ranch. I think that's where I want to stop. Some people just will not accept the use of fire. There are plenty of people who are willing to try, and I think our country will be better when we get our act together and get rules that will allow prescribed burning under reasonable conditions and using good judgment in applying fire in spring or summer. I'm not much for summer, so good luck tomorrow. I'll probably be in Menard somewhere. Thank you very much, and glad to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Landers.
Are there any questions for Dr. Landers? This is a very special man on the stage here today, so I hope you take the time to thank him for being here. His wife Helen is with us as well, and his daughter Amy. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you, James.
You're welcome. Got a question back there.
Dr. Landers, have you gotten discouraged over the years in the progress that we've made in prescribed burning?
I didn't quite understand. Did I get discouraged?
Have you gotten discouraged over the years in relation to how we progressed or digressed?
Yes.
Fire?
Yes, I'm discouraged from the lawsuits that have come up, the challenge in some of the procedures, and I don't know what to do about that. I don't get discouraged on my own place, and that's the way I escape. Make it in a very small world, but in the larger world, yes, I'm disappointed. I know we've done an awful lot of work with the Prescribed Burn Association, and I've not been able to participate much in that lately. But I think we really need to join in this process. I want to say something about John Cargyle. We burned on one of his ranches, and it was one of the better burns. We had a hard time getting the backfire safe, and as the fire was going over the hills, and the cedar was burning like Roman candles, and it was all safe, nowhere for it to go but into where we'd already burned out. And his comment was, I can sure tell you, you can't do this with a bunch of amateurs. He wasn't referring to us, but in my mind, yeah, I think I'm pretty much amateur when we're all amateurs and learning in the process, and I hope we're not discouraged.
Yes. How do you go about educating these people that still have the mindset of burning is bad, or they don't know it, they think there's too much liability in it? You know, through your years, how did you try to educate these people and turn them towards that prescribed fire can be a good thing?
I don't know where to go with that question. All I can say is that I have a cultivated field on one side of me. I have a rancher to the north of me that grazes to the ground and partly to the west, and I have a brother to the south. So if I can't burn under those situations, I just ought to quit. And the liability is beyond me to figure out. And if you're near a highway, that's the most dangerous. Rancher neighbors will often forgive you, but a fatality or damage on a highway is awfully hard to get over. So,
Any other questions for Dr. Landers?
here you go.
Do you have a copy of that poem? I have a client that should read that.
I'll be glad to furnish you a copy. You give me an address and I'll maybe before the day's over I can get you a copy.
I'll meet up with you, thank you.
I tell you what, if you like my poems, I'm going to be talking at Fort Concho in September and read a few more.
I'll
I'm
look
trying to
forward
make it.
hearing them.
Okay.